Hello everyone. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Please give me a hint about what you are hearing about this. Welcome to my live. Let me know. Let me know. Let me know if you can hear me. Yes, yes. Someone is saying yes, so you can hear me finally. That's perfect. Yes, perfect. Welcome everyone to my live. Um, I'm really happy to be here again. Actually, this is the second time for these happenings by Laowa. It's a great pleasure to me to be here to tell you more about how I work, how I plan my stories, my work in general, of course. Um, I am already having some question from you. Emanuele is asking, hope you will give some advice to use my Laowa 15 millimeters F4 macro. I'm in trouble with it. I will try. I will also. It's a lot of things I will try to say you tonight. So I will start now because it's a lot of time. It's a lot of things and not so much time actually. It's 1 hour. So let's start. If I will try to leave some time for the questions, but you can of course write your questions on Facebook and YouTube as you wish, and I will try to reply to everyone. So let's start. Tonight it will be about preparing macro shootings, how I work, how I start working from the scratch. I mean, from the very beginning, from when I hear in my life the need of doing something for photography, telling a new story, and so on. So I prepared a presentation about this. I will start with presentation, and sometimes I will be together with you with this split screen. So I will try to be present, not just the slides, of course. And I have a shoot to say you that this is important for tonight and for 1 week validity. You can buy Laowa stuff like lenses and other things from Laowa's website with this code. This is a 5% discount code if you put EMANB05, and there is no maximum limit of the number of discounted items you can purchase. So it's up to you. If you need something from Laowa, this is the chance to get a 5% discount on the stuff. So I will remember this or recall this at the end of my presentation tonight, but I wanted to let you know this as soon as we started. So let's start with the actual presentation, and I will tell you everything by some of the questions people also sometimes ask me around. So the first question is, what's the first thing you think when you're planning a photography shooting? And my reply normally is, studying my subject is the first and mandatory thing for me to do. This is very important actually. It's even more important than knowing how to photograph or having the right equipment. This is the first thing to do. So, for example, if I wanted to shoot, I could go out and find some nice ants like this Bornean weaver ants. These are very well photographed by many people and so on. But if you don't know them very well, you could miss a lot of things that are interesting about them. So you could miss the possibility, the chance to tell a story about these ants. So it's not just a pretty greenish ant that lives on the trees, but they also are predators. So if you know that, you can shoot these kind of photos of many of the soldiers attacking and subduing even stinging bees and other dangerous or poisonous animals. And you can know that there are two different type of these ants, the smaller ones and the higher ranking soldier ones. And there's also, of course, as in the most events, the queen will start a colony with just a few eggs, and all she needs is his own energies to lay the first eggs and to have her first, of course, workers, of course. So if you don't know that, you could find this ant under a leaf and miss the possibility to tell this story. Maybe you don't like to check the leaves. You are not into the story, so you didn't know about that, and you will miss this shooting. I'm starting with this, and then I will go more on the techniques and gear later, of course. Don't worry. After the colony starts and the queen laid her eggs at first, the first workers go around to look for prey, and they can subdue even larger prey if there are a lot of workers around and soldiers around. So where they put their prey once they took them in the wild, they take them into the nests that are made by weaving silk around and wrapping the leaves of the trees where they live on. They don't dig a burrow as other hens do. Sorry, for example, sorry, my English is skipping tonight. So everything you're seeing in this story, I'm telling you as a start, I knew that. So I learned that from documentaries, from scientific articles, and so on. So even before going into the field and telling this story and shooting, I knew that I could have met this kind of events and what they did. And I had the chance to go to Borneo, to Malaysia, a few times. So my story was built in many times I went there, because every time you go there, you discover, you find something you learned about before. Exactly, Emanuele is saying, Emanuele Zanlucchi is saying, it's so powerful to tell a story showing pictures. Yes, it's my wheel. I'm a documentarist more than a photographer artist. So I'm seeing myself as a documentary, as someone that tells stories, not just a single picture, if I can, of course. So going faster, this is a worker holding two leaves together, and then other workers come and to help him in other sides of this nest. For example, in this corner, many workers are keeping the leaves together, attached together, but they need the silk, and that's the time of the tinier workers, the smaller ones that come with their larvae, and the larvae excrete silk. They have glands, and they excrete the silk, so they use them like the toothpaste excreting silk things. But they are alive, they are well, they are not abused by the adult ones, of course. It's normal for them. And so seeing that, if you know what you are seeing, you can take the shot. You can really take the chance to see and photograph something unique, something incredible. So I wanted to start with this story to tell you that when I plan for shooting, the first thing I do is plan the knowledge about my future subject, or at least the ones I'm expecting or hoping to see, of course. Marvels in nature always happens, so even the unexpected one, of course. So one of the things I learned a lot later in the later trips is that they also tend some other insects to feed on the sap they produce. So they also farmers, not just predators. And also they are sometimes they are even tricked by other insects. In this case, it's a moth caterpillar that is kept and protected by the ants because they think this caterpillar is one of them, and also the caterpillar produced a substance that they love, so they protected the caterpillar for this reason as well. So they manage the caterpillar as it was their own larva. That this is incredible. But if you don't read the articles and the publication about this, you can miss these things. You can miss that. Also, you can miss to see the amazing ant-like shaped spiders that live and go around the nest of the weaver ants, like these Myrma plataleoides from Borneo. This is a jumping spiders actually, but it's incredible. It's not like any other jumping spider you could know. It's really ant-shaped. Then this is only for protection. It doesn't hit the ants. It doesn't try to eat the ants. Another one that is also similar to these ants eat the ants actually. It's like them to try to steal them and to eat them. This is it's a crab spider. It's a Tomisidae. It's another family, and it's incredible how it's able to subdue even larger prey, larger workers like this one, of course. And yes, of course, you can see many other things, but this was just the beginning. I mean, I wanted to show you how I think about going out and study and learn from articles and so on. And then I do another thing even before going for the shooting. Another question some people asks me is, once you know the subject more, as I told you, what's next? And the next thing is to do is building stories before being on the field. Not just the knowledge, you have to think about the stories. You have to think. I feel I have to think about the stories I want to tell. So this is another very important thing I do when I plan macro shootings. This is an example of some notes, very bad drawings I did in the past for another story. This is just an example, so I can put the presentation larger if you want to see better. This is just a small hint of what I can do, what I do when I go on the field with my colleague Francesco Tomasinelli, I worked with about this story. This one was a story about the life into the caves of Borneo in Mulu National Park, and also Gomantong caves in Borneo as well. So thinking about the storyboard, thinking about the story you are about to tell people with your images will give you a faster recognition of what you need to do in the field and what you are missing. After the shooting, if you don't have a right idea about what you need to tell, maybe you are missing something. You're missing a macro shoot or a wide angle macro shoot or something that you should have done to tell the story in the wall. So Emanuele is also asking, so you mean having a plan before going out for a shooting session? Yes, I mean that. I mean having a plan, at least a general plan. Not you don't need to have, of course, the storyboard like a movie maker. You don't really need always to do that. But of course, having a hint of what you're about to do and to see, that is very, very straightforward, and it will really, really save you time and save you also the time to decide what you do, because you're really already thinking about the story. So let's go further. How do you find your subjects? This is one of the main questions that many people ask me, and yeah, sure, it's not really easy to reply to this question because it depends on the habitat, situation, and subject, of course. For example, if I wanted to see and find the queen, the starting colony of the weaver ants we saw at first, I will have to check under the leaves. So it's not the same if I'm trying to find, of course, a burrowing animal, of course, but I'm trying to give you some advices, by the way, because I think it's interesting and it's something to keep in mind when you go out, no? Of course, to find your subject. So how I find my subject? Of course, sometimes the subject finds you. This is the case of the leeches in Borneo, and this is Nicola Messina, a very good friend of mine, a great botanist and a great explorer that found, as many that go there, found a leech on his leg, of course, and he took his time to photograph as well a little bit this leech. And it's a terrestrial one, it's a terrestrial species. They wait for you in the leaf litter, so I also took the chance to take a shoot about that on my skin. In this case, this is another leech. It's a tiger leech, quite painful, this one. And in this case it's just a classic macro, so we will go more on the technical side a little bit later. This is just an introduction to see you how I work at first. Of course, I'm reminding you this because I'm really getting into more techniques later. So let's go. You can find your animals even in your house. This is my country house. Of course, it was a non-used room in the basement with dust, dust and not used furniture and so on. And I found a beautiful tiny spider, a species related to black widows actually, that was able to catch a bigger spider that is very common in our houses here in Italy, in Europe. This is a situation that is very, very easy to find, and you have to look in the corner of your house, close to the places where you don't clean so often, or in garages, in all the places where you don't go so often. You can find very, very often nice subjects from your home. So I'm saying that because I know some people in the world are still in lockdown. So maybe you could find some macro subject even while you're home in quarantine. I mean, because I know how it's working around the world. We stayed in lockdown for many weeks and we are just about to go out finally from this mess that is the pandemic. So just to give you an hint, many times in nature you have to go and to see the tracks of the animals. So of course, this is another very important thing to do. You have to learn, and so we go back to the first things. You have to learn how the animals live and walk, and you will see the tracks, of course. And the tracks are very, very important, for example, in the deserts, like in the Namib Desert in Namibia, where I've been many times. And yes, this is the place where you can find animals by tracking them. And this is how to do that. You have to go in the morning because the wind during the day will blow the tracks away. So the best thing to do is to go in the morning, early in the morning, as the sun goes out, and look for tracks. And you will see the tracks, you will follow the tracks, and you have to learn, of course, where they are going, the right direction, of course. These tracks you are seeing now, for example, on the left, the vertical photo is showing a beetle track, and the upper right one is showing the burrow left by a spider actually, and the lower one is the tracks left by a dune chameleon, the Namaqua chameleon. So every tracks will lead you to different animals. Here's just an example of where I'm looking around to see my subject, to look for example, in this case I was looking in this image for a Peringway's adder, that is a venomous snake from Namibia. And this adder is always living around some shrubs, is always trying to look for some shades and for the same places where lizards also go. So if you know that, you will not lose time looking around in the dunes where there's nothing, but you will aim to the right place in the right moment and following the right tracks, of course. So just another hint. Go further, of course. You have to look in the right timing, in the right places. If you look for animals in the Namib during midday or in the night, maybe you don't find so much. But if you go in the forests of Borneo or Central and South America or in Africa, in tropical Africa, you have to go out at night. Of course, beware of lions, of course, if you're in Africa. But aside of that, you have to go out at night because it's at night that insects and all arthropods go out to hunt, to look for food, and they are protected by the night, so they are not found by birds and so on. So this is another example of why these animals stay out at night. During the day, they could be during the first hours of the day, they are still lightly visible, like in this shot. But as soon as the sun goes up, they become less visible. As this is just an example of what happens during the day. So you will miss this insect, for example, if you go in the forest at midday. This is another example. This is a very transparent and tiny mantis from Borneo, and this is totally transparent. You wouldn't see this during the day. It's almost impossible to see it. I saw it at night. I shoot that image to show how it was transparent. This is another example of how this mantis is really thin, is like a ghost. It's incredible. And another one is that also some vertebrates are almost invisible during the day. So at night they are active and you can see them. These are just other examples of photos I shoot because I knew that I would have found that animal. In this case, this is a salamander from the Alps, and I found it because I was looking for this in the right season. It was starting of the summer actually, but I was very high in the Alps, so it's an alpine environment. It's cold, so you have these animals in activity even later, and it was like afternoon after some clouds and humidity came up from the ground and from the area below, so they could have been active because they need humidity. So you have to learn about your subject and look for them in the right place, of course. Thank you about loving the ghost photo, Lee Lemon. This is another example. This is another salamander for another corner of Italy, and you can only find this subspecies only after very heavy rains during the right season, the right temperatures. So this is another example, and so on. I'm going very fast because I don't want to do too much time, but I put many examples of that to show you that you have to learn about your animals. This is the point. How I find my animals, my subject, I know them, I track for them, I learn when and where they are active to look for them. These are tadpoles of a micro-eyelid frog in the pitcher plants of Borneo, for example, and I was looking for them. They are always there if there is the breeding season on, and if you go at night, you can see them with the torches in a better way. For example, you can find, of course, during the right season and the right timing, the breeding ones. So as I did with these tree frogs breeding on the trees around the pond in Borneo as well. And another very important thing I do is to hire or to ask to local people to help me. And this is a very important thing. If I'm an herpetologist, I'm a reptiles and amphibians researchers actually. So I started with my passion of nature about studying amphibians and reptiles. So I know many people around the world that can help me finding my beloved amphibians, for example, as I did in Panama by calling my friend Abel Batista Rodriguez and his wife Pamela. You are seeing them in this photo, and they permitted me and they granted me with their presence and their help to find many of my subjects, like this tiny glass frog, these two breeding glass frogs from Panama. And if you go with the right people, and if you go with the right if you go with the knowledgeable people of the place, you even you save even more time, because you know the animals, you know where they are active, when, but you are not from that place. So they already know the right places to look for them. So, for example, thanks to them, I was able to photograph all these different morphs of strawberry poison dart frogs, for example. And these photos, for instance, are all shot with the 100 millimeters ultra macro Laowa lens. Just for your, just to give you some advice also about the lenses I used. I'm starting on getting more on the technical side, of course. This is, for example, shot with a 100 millimeters Laowa, the ultra macro one, of course. And this one is the same animal, probably not really the same specimen, but the same animal, same morph, color morph. But this one has been shot with a 15 millimeters, and this again 100 millimeters macro, 15 millimeters, same morph, and with a wide angle macro and a classic portrait macro, of course. This is another one, and the same, also the same morph, not the same specimen, with a 15 millimeters macro. Again, another one with a 15 millimeters macro. Going with a specialist also could grant you the possibility to take not just macros, but telling the stories about the research they are carrying on, and even you can end up finding some very, very interesting species. I was in Peru many times with this researcher, that is Alessandro Catenazzi from Miami University. He is a specialist of amphibians, reptiles, and conservation. And with him, we found a lot of very interesting species, and I was able to photograph this one, for example, and other frogs. I was also able to find sad things, of course. The stories I tell aren't always nice, I mean, aren't always positive. Sometimes I also share the negative sides of being in nature and doing conservation photography. In this case, you're seeing a dead frog. It's a species from the high Andes, and it was dead because of the fungus that is killing frogs all around the world. So I wanted to tell this story too, and I was able to do that thanks to the researchers I was with. Another thing, I was able to photograph an extinct in the wild toad. This is the so-called golden frog from Panama, Atelopus zeteki, and I was able to do that because I met this nice person, that is Edgardo Griffith from Valle de Anton Conservation Center in Panama, that was able to save them from extinction and is raising the next population of these toads. It's another species, the one he's holding now in his hand, and hopefully in the future he will be able to release them back in the wild. This is another species of frog that meant a lot to me, because this is a so-called Lazarus species. So it's a species that was believed to be extinct in the wild, extinct in from that location since 10 years, and we found that again in Peru with Alessandro, and it was amazing to see it. Another example, and so on. So I put all these photos because I wanted to show you all the things that you can do thanks to people that can help you. So another advice and another thing that I always do when I'm planning my shootings is to call for people, for local people, for guides. I hire guides. I happily pay a local guide, a certified one, of course, someone that is working for the local park or something like this, and I happily pay to have them their advice and so on. This is another question from Egle from the Facebook. She's asking actually, sorry for misunderstanding. How do you get in touch with the researchers? Are they so willing to share their time to guide you and show the location? It depends. There are some, actually some researchers are also friends of mine. So it's actually something that goes since a long time, of course, it goes on. In other cases, for example, the two guys from Panama, Abel Batista and his wife, they do that for work as well. They carry people on a, of course, sustainable way, and they go around with people and that pay them if you want, if you need. They get paid and they can show you some species, some unique species. So. And I read another question from YouTube. Do you move them before shooting every time? No, at all. I'm trying. It depends. When I'm with the researchers, sometimes I have to move them because they have previously been catched and by researchers for monitoring, for measuring, and so on. So sometimes yes, I have to move them because they were in a plastic bag, for example. So I put them back in the wild and they take a shoot. In this case, for example, the photo you are seeing, the two mating Atelopus, I would never touch them because they are mating and I could stress them a lot. And there's another example of another photos that where I didn't move the animal at all. This is a calling, it was calling, it just, the focal sac is not completely inflated here, but it was calling, is a calling male. If you touch them, if you move them, they will stop calling and they will deflate their vocal sac totally. You wouldn't see that vocal sac under the throat. And I wouldn't be able to do this shot. That is a very tricky shot to do. If you want, I can tell you more about this shot because it's a is a shot where I change the focusing during the shooting. So I set 30 seconds shooting. I first focus on the subject. I make the flashes go as soon as I click, and then the next 29 seconds after, I turn the focus on infinite to get the stars, and I open the aperture from let's say f13, f16 to, let's say, f4 of the 15 millimeters Laowa I was using for this image. No, in this case I wasn't Emanuele is asking remote control. No, I wasn't using remote control in this case, but yes, not to stress them, I often use remote control. So we are getting to the next question. I'm seeing you are asking the thing I was planning to tell you right after. So how do you approach your subjects? Of course, the general reply is quietly moving, trying to avoid contact whenever as possible. This is very important. It's actually mandatory to me. I like and I love to touch animals. I'm an herpethologist, I repeat that. So if I have permissions and I do research or I'm with the researchers, I sometimes move the animals, but I try to keep this at minimum. I don't like to touch them so much anymore. I touched the animals more in the past when I was younger and less experienced. But I started not loving these images because, for example, for lizards, I started seeing that when you catch them and you pose them on a rock to do the photo, for example, that you can often see that the pupil is enlarged for the stress. And I didn't like that thing. I didn't like to show an animal that was a little bit stressed. So I try to avoid that whenever it's possible. For example, in this case, that leaf frog, mountain leaf frog from Borneo, was so confident that I wouldn't see it, that he stayed still for the whole shooting that lasted like, let's say, 10 minutes, 20 minutes maybe maximum. And I put the camera on the ground. I was using this. I was using, I mean, actually, I was using the bigger one, the D850, the reflex one, but I was using the 15 millimeters. I put the camera on the ground, so very easy. I just put the camera on the ground. I use the flashes in that case. So in this case, you are seeing the all light you are seeing is flashes. I put two flashes with diffusers on the front, aside of the camera, and one bigger one, this one, for example, I'm holding now. It's a classic, gun-shaped flash from, in this case it's a Nikon flash, but it doesn't matter. I always use them in manual, so it doesn't matter what you have, of course. And to give some light on the background. So this is the thing I did with this image to get this photo. Dario Bacchini is saying that I'm making everything feel easy to do. Yes, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's harder. For example, the tricky photo I showed you before of the tree frog is not so easy to do actually. I must admit. This is a classic macro, for example. In this case, it's a classic macro, but for a skittish and shy subject. It was a fly, a bee-like, very similar, a mimic of bees. In this case, I just moved very slowly. I approached the fly while it was feeding on this daisy. And another thing that I did is to put the right side flash. You are not seeing flashes, but I was using two very well diffused flashes that I will show you later. In this case, I tried to avoid the flash to shade the fly, so it didn't perceive the shadow coming over it, so it didn't perceive the arrival of something above it. So this is another trick I use often with the skittish or flying insect, not to scare them away. I try to avoid shadows to go over them while I'm approaching them. Another thing is I try to stay on their side, on their altitude. I mean, so they don't see something coming from above. That is very it's very scary for them. This is another example. In this case it's a wild bee, and it was warming up at the sun, and I just approached it very slowly, and I took this shot with another. I'm not saying this always, but I was using the 100 millimeters macro from Laowa as well. I'm going faster. I don't want to be late, but I wanted to show you something about my error as well. As I told you, I try not to mess with nature as best as I can. Sometimes I don't know my subject very well, it happens. And for taking this shot, for example, I tried my best to stay still and let the fishes, the mud skippers fish, come closer to me, as they were doing, because they were walking all along the shore, following the tide. So I said, okay, I just put myself along the beach, waiting with my camera. In that case, I had an older lens. It was a 24 millimeters. The Laowa still didn't exist, I think, or maybe just the 75 millimeters macro, the first 75 millimeters macro. It was quite a few years ago, this image. And the thing that happened before this photo is that I didn't perceive that I was stopping all the fishes to walk along the shore. So at one point, a friend of mine told me, Emma, you are doing a mistake because they are always all trying to circumnavigate you from the back. So I was in some way doing a traffic jam of fishes, of mud skippers all around me. And that, I don't like this. So I changed my position. I put myself a little bit far from them, on another corner of the beach, and I was finally able to get this shot. So I was very happy to do the right thing, not stressing the animals, and so on. Zoltan Horls is asking from Facebook, hello Emanuele, any other interesting session? I'm planning a trip out to Zanzibar and I'm having a problem finding material on research materials for wildlife. So it is really useful, but I'm always afraid to miss a shot. Yes, of course. How can you decide what lens to put in the camera when searching for subject, when you still don't know what you will find, of course? How do you adjust for unexpected situation? Do you try to rapidly change the lens or try to get the necessary setup? Okay, yes, that's a very good question. I always put the 100 millimeters lens as a first lens attached to my camera. Almost always I'm using this lens attached because it's 100 millimeters. It permits me to get on macro side, of course, even a dragonfly, something that is maybe far and you cannot approach it very fastly, of course, or very, very easily. And if the things permits me that, later I try some wide angle macro and stuff like this. I learned that by trials and error when I was younger, because for example, when I was in Sardinia, I tried to photograph local skink from Sardinia, and as I tried the wide angle lens first. It was a lot of years ago, very much time ago, and the skink was away from me in a blink of an eye before I will be able to get a classic macro shot. So I advise you I always try to put my macro setup, my classic macro setup. So 100 millimeters lens. I show you this. I wanted to do that later, but this is my bracket for macro flashes. I put here the flash holder, and I use this. Sorry, I'm taking them. These macro flashes from Mikey. So I always take them mounted on the camera, of course. Sometimes I'm using two cameras, and you will discover why in a few minutes. But normally when I'm out, I try to stick with that setup because it's the thing that permits you to get the shot in a more fast way. So I'm going a little bit faster now. I don't want to miss. This is another setup, actually. The presentation is helping me a lot. My organization was good this time. This is another setup I'm using a lot lately. This is another setup I'm always having in my bag. And this is another way I'm approaching the animals in the last years with the underwater camera. This is D850 Nikon. Inside this sleeve, underwater sleeve, that is from Outex. It's a US brand, and I love this because it's lightweight. You can remove this silicone thing in a blink of an eye. You can put it in a blink of an eye. If you can pack it in a luggage, in the backpack, even if you are going in the woods, so in a land-based shooting area, But you can find a small pond, for example, with breeding toads on frogs, and you are able to do underwater shootings with ease. I will show you another lens I use for the underwater shooting of frogs in a few seconds, but this is another example of what I'm doing for approach animal now. And someone mentioned remote control before. This is an example. I use the remote control connecting the camera with my phone. With this, in this case, I was using Snap Bridge from Nikon brand, and I show you another time. This is my phone. This is the This is the actual thing I'm seeing. I can change aperture, ISO rating, white balance, time, and so on. Even mode from A to M, from manual, from aperture first, and so on. So it's very useful. I have to use, in this case, autofocus lens. So when I use this setup, I don't use Laowa lenses because I can't autofocus from remote, of course, but I use the Laowa lenses underwater as well when I could move the zooming and focus rings, of course. And I was able, in this case, I was able to avoid stress to the animals, my presence in the water, my heavy and voluminous body into the water, and I was able to take some shots like this one, for example. This is just an example. This is a very delicate moment for the amphibians, so I always try to avoid any stress to them, any more stress to them. They see you, so if you avoid to be seen and you put the camera that is still, it stays still, they will calm down and they will act naturally. They will continue to deposit their eggs like this. For example, spectacled salamanders are doing in a small stream pond in the Apennines in Italy. And this is another occasion I use that setup. In this case, I use the camera in a split screen, so halfway out of the water, always using the remote control in this case as well, not to enter the water. In other occasion, of course, you have to move into the water, of course, you have to move and look for animals, running them around. Like in this case, I was photographing a water beetle larvae that predated tadpole, and the water was very cold, as in this case. You are seeing I'm wearing winter clothes, and the water was very cold, but it was worth doing that because I was able to get this shot, for example. So another advice I can give you is, if you can, you can carry you around this. I always carry with me this Autex sleeve, Autex underwater housing with a dome, with a circular dome, to get some underwater shots, wide angle shots. This is another thing I do, and to avoid stress. Sometimes I approach the animals when I know that I can do that. For example, with this chameleon that was well hidden in these shrubs in the Namib desert. It was calm. The slightly darker coloration is not because he's afraid of me, but it was actually thermoregulating. It was warming up at the sun. So of course I wasn't disturbing it too much. I just posed a diffused flash on the left side, and the other light you are seeing is the sunlight coming from the right side of this image. And I didn't touch the animal at all, because if I do that, I can transmit my smell to the animal, and I could ruin his life, because the jackals or other predators could find it by smelling my smell, my odor. So it's always best to avoid to touch animals, also for this reason. Dario is also asking me, what with the Nikon app you are always able to focus correctly remotely? Depends. Yes, normally, yes. Sometimes when I have low lights, of course, it become a little bit trickier. But yeah, I find it very useful, actually. This is another occasion when I approach the animal. I try to be correct with them. This case was a venomous snake, that already had his prey. He has some prey in his guts. So if you touch it, not only you risk to be bitten, of course, but this is a side note. Also, you are risking for it to vomit, and you will ruin his lunch. So it's very, very. It's a really delicate moment. I really advise you not to do that. So I approached it very quietly. I was using the 15 millimeters or another wide angle lens. I changed them a lot, and I tried to do the shots while moving me frontward and backward to get the focus with the diffuser flashes helping me to stay away from it. So I try to put a barrier between me and the venomous snakes, of course. This is another photo I like a lot. I took this photo in the Namib desert, and I tried to get this shot without disturbing the animal, but actually trying to get as close as possible. And Laowa guys, Lee, Lemon, Kevin, you all, Chan, all of you, please don't look the next image I'm about to show you. This is a sensitive image for you, so please don't look. And also the people that is sensitive about how using the lenses in the field, because if you are among these people, you will probably don't like the way I was using the 15 millimeters macro lens. So jokes apart, yes, I always try to keep the stress to the animals at the least level, and I wait, of course. People shooting wolves or birds are used to waiting. I don't know why we macro shooters cannot do the same with some delicate or stress or unique or peculiar species that have to be treated with some respect. So in this case, for example, this is another occasion when I waited for the lizard to go out of the eye socket of the dead seal in Peru. This is another occasion, another example. I waited and the toad started calling again. So I wasn't stressing it at all. I was using the flashes. I put 2 flashes in front of it, 1 flashes to light the background. No problem to the animal. Also here, I was able to photograph this animal calling. This is a toad from Borneo. And I waited there. I waited in the darkness. And it was standing still, calling. So I waited and I put the flashes. I stayed still. It started to call back again after hearing me moving around a little bit with the tripod and so on. I used the tripod to keep the position, not because I needed, because it's all flash. But I used the tripod to not to move too much around it. And then I was able to photograph a female coming by, approaching it. So I left them to their future mating, possibly. So I was able to photograph them without disturbing them. We just wait. It's so beautiful to be at night in the forest, hearing the sound of the forest. Actually, Lee Lemon is asking if the 15 millimeters is still fine now. Actually, I must admit that I sent that lens to Kevin to fix it because it was a little bit full of sand, probably. No, it was actually fine, but I had to clean it a little bit. So in the past, I sent the lens to Kevin to have it controlled, for example. So for to be sure. Don't worry, it's here with me. It's fine. It's saying you hello, so don't worry. I'm going fast. I don't want to lose the time. We are about to close to end this live show, but I still have something to show you. So what you put in your bag, let's end this presentation with this. I try to put everything I need and a little more until my backbone will survive. This is the truth. From YouTube, someone is asking, why do you use as a focusing light for... What I use as a focusing light for manual lenses. It depends. I sometimes use. I show you that because it's something I put in my bag, so it's also in theme. I use this system is the Makey, as you pronounce it, flash macro flash system. So this macro flash system, this is the second. There are two versions. There's a Mark II version, and this Mark II version permit me to use the flashes and to use this light as a focusing light. So I sometimes use this, and this is helpful, of course. Another time, at night, for example, I use my head torch, my headlamp. Also because using the mirrorless cameras, you have the focus peaking and the light enhancement. So it's also very useful even if you are photographing not in stop down. You are focusing without getting the focus without opening the aperture wide open to get the to nail the focus. So yes, this is another thing I do, and sometimes I use some LED lights that I put around to have some light. But normally, yes, the headlamp. For macro shootings, the headlamp is the thing I use the most to get everything in focus, to be sure about the focus. Another one, Pranay, is asking how to focus stack using Laowa 100 millimeters. I don't focus stack, I'm sorry. There are many people that do focus stacking. I don't normally do that. If I did in the past, the photos you are seeing now, they are not in focus stacking, they are single shots, and I don't do that normally. If I did in the past, I just took a few shots at like f13 and a few shots just to have a little deeper depth of field, but it's enough. It's just for trial. Yes, Laowa is also recalling you the 5% discount, putting Eman B05 on the Laowa website if you are buying lenses. I will recall this even later. Let's go. A few minutes are still left. So what I put in my camera, this is not my backpack, but just to give you a hint, when you are in the field, when you're in expedition, normally you try to avoid weight, of course, but you need stuff, you need gear. So this was my backpack packed like 3 days ago in the morning. I went near Rome city in a very good place where I was shooting, and this is my backpack already packed to go back home with all my stuff packed very tightly all together. This is actually the 100 millimeters. Sorry, Laowa guys, I was using another cover in that case because I lost the original one. Sorry, but I don't actually have any more Nikon lenses inside my backpack now. I will show you all the lenses I'm carrying. I wanted to show you also some of the images I do with all the lenses. So this is a photo with the 15 millimeters shift lens, macro lens, that is also shift. This is another photo I did with another lens I still use for underwater and for some tricky shots on land. That is the Tokina 10 to 17 millimeters fisheye lens, because it's autofocus, and when I need autofocus with moving subject, I use that lens. In all the other situation, I use the 15 millimeters because it's sharper and it delivers way more quality on the image. So if I use the Tokina, or for example underwater, as I told you. So in these cases I use the other sides I use the 15 millimeters. This is another example why I like the 15 Laowa instead of the fisheye Tokina. This is a photo with the fisheye, the Tokina 10 to 17. Okay, it's fine, but I didn't like the sun at all. The sun star, it's terrible. And so I shot the same image with a 15 millimeters macro from Laowa, and this is way better to me. But it is of course, my opinion, of course. This is just for to end this. This is two examples of what I can do with the 15 millimeters macro. You already saw that. This is another one. This is the only lens actually that can permit you to move the focus and the aperture manually, and to do the stars subject photos wide angle like this one, you need this type of lenses. And the Tokina, for example, doesn't have an aperture ring on it, so I couldn't move the aperture from f16 to f4, for example. This is another very important thing to do if you want to do this type of wide angle macro at night. And I love the 24 millimeters macro probe lens from Laowa. I'm always having this in my backpack. Why? Because for many reasons. Because it permits me to go low, to stay low on the ground. It gives you a perspective that any other lens doesn't permit you. You can go into the grasses, you can go into things to have a deeper perspective of the macro shootings you are doing. Like in this case with this salamander that was under a leaf, and I put a light over to get this amazing and intimate shot. Amazing for me because it was the first time I was able to put the lens so close and so in an intimate way with the subject. So I really love this lens, the 24 probe lens. This is another example of this lens. These are two Black Widow from Italy. The left one is male, and you can see the lens standing side of them, very low on the ground, very, very nice. If I tried such image with a 15 millimeters Laowa, it would have been trickier with such a tiny subject among rocks to have the same perspective. It doesn't mean that you can not do that, but in some occasion it's very tricky. For example, in this case I tried, and I got with a 15 millimeters macro this shot of a Black Widow on his web. I tried the same with the 24 millimeters and I got this shot. So it's all about perspective. It's all about what you prefer. But in this case, I prefer this image instead of the previous one, this one. Even if I like this, of course, as well. I kept this, but of course, this one is more into the world, into the tiny world of spiders. Another thing for what I like this lens, the Laowa, the probe lens, is that you can put it into the water, and you could say, okay, of course, you already have the Outex sleeve, the underwater camera, of course, but you cannot do the shooting I'm doing there in this image with that stuff. To reach that fish in its burrow, pointing out just with his head, it would have been impossible with any other lens instead of the Laowa, the probe lens. So this is a unique lens in this case because it permits you to go underwater for about 25 centimeters, let's say. So it's very useful. I never use the LED light in front. I also kind of like the sharpness of this lens, even if I would like it to be a little bit more wide, I mean more to get more light and a little bit more sharp, a little more sharpness when I go on the land, but it's still very usable. I printed these images, they are sharp. They can be printed in large print, so this is enough. I mean, I love this lens and I will continue to use it a lot. Egle was asking about the stars in the background, and she was asking if they are stacked. No, it's a single shot image. The one I showed before, I will probably get back if you want. If I have a few minutes, Laowa guys, you can say me if I have a few more minutes to go there. And I do the shot in 30 seconds. I start with focusing and aperture for the subject. So let's say f16, and flashes on the subject. The flashes pop when I click, and then the photos is going on now 30 seconds. So during the 30 seconds, as smoothly as I can, I turn to infinite to get the stars, and I turn the aperture from f16 to, let's say, f4, the maximum aperture of the 15 millimeters, and I leave the camera, and I got that shot. Sometimes it's tricky for the middle ground. You can get some blurred areas, but it's fine. You can really get some nice shots. Back to the probe, I really love these shots of the surface. This is not a upside photo. It's an animal skating on the surface, on the lower surface of the water, on the lower side, on the roof of the water. So this is another shot that I was able to do in a very shallow pool thanks to the probe. And another lens I'm using nicely in the last month is the 9 millimeters from Laowa. This is I think the widest existing full frame lens, not fisheye lens in the world. It's amazing, and you can see the setup here with the diffuser flash. I put the camera on the ground, so yeah, it's very easy, very simple. I use the delayed mode not to convey any vibration moving my hand on the camera. So I clicked and waited for 3 seconds before the actual photo being taken, and I got this shot. Lately, and it's really the end of my presentation, I'm also trying to do my lenses, starting with the Laowa lenses. So I started trying to do the craziest thing in my life. I'm trying to build something that can permit me to have a super wide angle, super macro lens. It's actually a so-called relay lens. It's a mixture of lenses attached all together. This is an example. And how I took this photo. I took this photo attaching the 100 millimeters Laowa lens to an extension tube, and in front of it I attached other things. I think I have them here. Yes, I use this. Sorry, I use this system. So it's two Rhinox DSC250, a little extension tube, and a CCTV lens. The one used, for example, for the GoPros or for the cameras, for security cameras. Sorry, I wasn't recalling the name. So I'm trying to do this kind of shots, and you can do something similar with the 15 millimeters, for example, like in this case. But the perspective is very different, and the animal and the background in this case are more visible all together. So it's a different kind of approach to wide angle macro. I talk a lot with the Laowa guys, hoping they will possibly do their own super mega wide angle relay lens one day, because I think that their engineers, their abilities are way more able than me and my trial and error technique to get the best quality of these images. But I'm already quite happy about the results of what I'm doing. This is a unbranded lens I found on eBay, so I cannot give you the right name of these things because I don't know. It's a mess. It's a really wild side of photography. So this is another example. This was a very tiny fly. This was another occasion. You can see how tiny is the subject. The subject is these two tiny fungi on the leaf, and this is the result. And this is another occasion, this is another example. This is a water skater, and this is another occasion, another example. This is a beetle, a weevil beetle. Of course, this is another one, another super wide angle macro. We are getting to the end, and I will get to your question. I see many very interesting questions, so I'm really going fast for you. This is another example. This is a beetle shot with the relay lens, and this is the same shot with the probe lens from Laowa. I love both photos. I keep and use both photos, but as you can see, the relay lens I created using the 100 millimeters have a little bit more depth of field in the background, but the quality in general of the shot is better on the probe, so I'm still working on this. And I saw a question from Ariel that is saying, have you used the Laowa 25 millimeters ultra macro? Of course, I love that lens. I always have this lens in my backpack. It's here with me, of course. I always use this to do super classic macro photo like this one. I was prepared about your question, as you can see. This is a very tiny lichen on a rock with a very tiny acarian on the top of it, like waiting for the aliens to get it, probably with the legs straight up. This is another example of me using the 25 millimeters ultra macro. I love that lens. It's a tricky lens. You have, if you want to do the single shot as I do, you always have to find the right perspective, the right angle to do the shot and to get the thing you want in focus in this shot. If you do stacking, it's not a problem. You just go and you can do your stack as you wish, of course. So this is the end of my presentation for tonight. I'm trying to reply to some of the previous questions. I see that Pranay was asking, can the 15 millimeters wide angle macro be used for landscape photography? Yes, it can be used, sure, as Dave Razzi replied as well. I use it a lot for general landscape photography. I love it, and also I like the 77 front ring of this lens. So you can put the filters easily on it. So I use this with degrading filters, ND filters, polarizing filters, and it always gets me very nice results. So yes, you can use this without any problem. I don't know if there are any more questions. I wanted to do also tonight a shout out for James Talking. He will be hearing and having a live for Laowa on the 7th May, so in about 10 days. I mean next month. He's a documentary director who has 20 years experience. He participated in many music shows from the globe. He worked with Beyonce, Rihanna, the Rolling Stones, Taylor Swift, and many more. So I really advise you to follow the next Meeting Masters happening on the 7th May. I will be there probably because it's very interesting to me to see such experience in such different field than myself. There are a little more questions. Ger is asking, which do you prefer for Sony E-mount, the 25 millimeters of the 100 millimeters as a full frame, and what is the difference? Okay, this is a very difficult reply because these are similar but different lenses. If you are starting with macro and you are getting into the ultra macro side, I would advise you the 100 millimeters because it's easier to use. and you can go on infinity if you use this as a classic 100 millimeters lens. It's sharp, it's incredibly sharp. And if you go with you know, a lot of megapixel camera, you can crop and even get a slightly of course magnification after by cropping, of course, if you want, if you do. But if you want to do like ants, very small things, very small mushrooms, then I advise you to do that with the 25 millimeters lens. The difference are these ones, the use of this, the subject you are going to do are the main difference. Of course, the more you go in a macro and in magnification, the less depth of field you need, you will have, and the more light you'll need. So be prepared to have your macro flashes ready. I use these flashes with this diffuser, and I mount, as a last note about my photography, I mount another diffuser on them, a custom made diffuser. I cut this wing and I put some Velcro here. So this is my setup when I do macro. Two of them mounted on these brackets, Photo Pro brackets. You can find the Photo Pro, the Mikey flashes on the macrodojo.com website. It's the store of Nicky Bay. He's also a very good friend and a Laowa user as well. You also find Laowa there. But about buying Laowa stuff, I remind you that for a week since today, you will have a 5% discount code on Laowa site, putting EmanB05 on their discount check while you are checking out with your buying. So I wanted to remind you this, because it's it's nice to get you to be able to let you have some discount if you need to buy the lenses from Laowa. Okay, thank you very much. I thank you everyone. I think we are about the end. Yes, I thank you everyone. Thank you to everyone that connected here tonight from, like, in India. It's very late in India. It's almost 2 a.m. in India. So welcome to Saturday. It was very, very nice to have you all here. Thank you for the Laowa guys, Lee Lemon, Kevin Young, all the other people from Laowa for permitting me to be here again once to tell you more about my work, how I plan it and how I do that. So thank you. If you have any more question about my techniques, my gear I use, I hope I told you everything, but if I missed something, please feel free to write me on Instagram, on Facebook, everyone, to ask me whatever you want, whatever you need to know. I will be more than happy to give you advices. If you need also to know about the Outex underwater sleeves, I will be more than happy to tell you also about that too, because I'm using them and they're giving me so much happiness together with the Laowa lenses. So it was very nice, very nice. Thank you all the guys from Italy too, Marco Rampinelli, Nicola Zanino, all the others guys, all the people from Chile, from all the parts of the world. It was very nice. Thank you so much. All the best.